Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the episode of Tatami Talk. My name is Juan. This is my co-partner Anthony. It's a judo podcast for judo players by two judo players. And as you can see today, I'm covering a non-disclosed secure location, otherwise known as the dojo office.
I really want to know where that dummy in the back right.
Yeah, this new guy that we got here.
Where is it from? Like,
he just showed up.
He just showed up randomly after class. It was sitting on the bench. I'm like, well, someone just left this here.
And I was like an Abaddon or Abadel. What are those? It's a Chucky or something, you know?
Yeah, that's really weird. That's just there.
So start grappling us and throwing us and stuff. Watch.
I think it's kids. Like, it's not. You can't really see it in the video right now, but the legs are like really short. I think it's made for kids to like practice taking the back and getting their hooks in. I think that's basically what it is. So
it's a very tiny doll.
Yeah.
All right. So me and Anthony, we tried to do something. So a few weeks ago, for our last episode, you might have heard us talk about how we were going to try to video and world. Okay. So what we've been doing when we do our little 3-clip scrimmage with Sawtelle and with Goltz Judo, we've been recording it, live streaming it, and then showing it later. So this past time we were going to do it, I was going to provide commentary with Anthony. And we did. We did do commentary. But something happened that it became super, super choppy. Yeah. So why did it become so choppy?
So as you all know, I bought a camera for recording the short videos that we're going to do. And also I was intent on using it as like a higher quality webcam to stream the tournament, and it ended up looking okay on our screen, like at the tournament.
It looked great. That was the thing.
It looked great. It looked great.
I sounded good. It looked great.
Yep.
You know.
But apparently on the stream and the recording it was choppy. And during testing, like I've been testing this thing for quite a while, right? It did happen on my screen at home when I was testing it. And what I ended up having to do was drop it from 60 FPS because it was actually able to capture 60 FPS motion, and that actually does up to 120 FPS. But I dropped it to 30 FPS to make it smooth. And I thought, okay, everything's good to go. But I guess it wasn't good enough because whatever data is transmitting to my laptop, because my laptop's pretty old, it's an old MacBook. I think the camera's basically too good for my laptop to process the information to stream and record. The encoding is bad, basically. So it was really unwatchable. It was really choppy. So I ended up just not uploading it, which is sad. And again, because it's a MacBook, as most people who have one of the older Macs know that they have limited USB ports. I didn't have another port to set up a camera to record a backup version of the thing, which is what I did in the past. In the past, I had a backup recording. So back to the drawing board. I'm probably still going to use the camera, but this time I'm going to record the raw footage with it. I'm not going to hook it up as a webcam. So I'm not going to invest in a new powerful laptop just for this thing that happens 4 times a year. So I'm most likely going to just use the camera to upload the raw footage, and maybe I'll edit in the scoreboard afterwards, but then I'll have to sync in the time and all that kind of stuff. So that's something in the future. I don't know yet, but I'm going to go back to the previous setup of using this webcam that you see right now. I use for the Zoom. We use that to record and stream the tournaments moving forward.
We tried some new things. Like for us, it worked great. Even with my audio, when I was listening to myself, it sounded fine there the day of. But even people were saying that when they were trying to watch it live, that my voice was super, super low. And I know it was low because we had the camera right next to, like, camera's like maybe 3 feet away from me or something, or less than that.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to talk like very smooth and like not so loud. So the other microphones, you have like me on 2 mics, and you hear me like just the stereo version is sounding horrible.
Yeah. So what I had was these, we brought these mic I'm using right now for the podcast. But then we had the way we set up with the wires and everything. It was really close to the camera recording too. So again, we just have to mess with the setup a little bit, and maybe in the future we'll use wireless mics. I've been wanting to get a pair of those anyway. Like they're good for making the judo videos with. So maybe get one of those wireless mics and test it out. But overall, the tournament was smaller than usual. I think when we first did the in-house tournament, that was right as things were reopening, right? And people were like starving to compete and everything. And then there was one tournament and there was two tournaments. So then people were still coming, but then now there's tournament like every twice a month or once a month or something. So people felt less need to come compete, even though I don't know why they wouldn't come, because you don't have to wait around all day. We were done in like 2 hours, right? At this time.
Seriously. Yeah. It was like, I don't even 2 hours, like an hour and a half, hour 45, something like that. We were done with everybody.
Yeah. It was done fast.
Like, was it like 60, 70 matches, something like that?
Yeah, it was like 50 matches.
Was it 50, only 50 this time? Okay.
Yeah, we were going to do more, but everyone just wanted to eat pizza, drink beer, and then get the hell out of there. So, we did one extra match, I think. And that was it. So, we're still going to do it. Even if it's small, it's not a big deal. I think we still get to try things out and have fun. And I get to practice doing these tournament software stuff. And also I've used this opportunity to teach our students how to run the scoreboard and also regarding the rules. Cause, good thing that the commentary, no, we didn't upload the recording, but there were a few calls that were questionable, but yeah, I wanted to go back and review it, but there was one particular one. Remember I pulled you aside and I was like, that was definitely not a score. Was it? Basically, we
thought it was you and me both.
Our angle was our angle was the only angle that you could see it from, basically. Yeah, because the ref was on the opposite side of us, looking at the front, so there's no way he can see it. And then the two side judges on the chairs just so happened to be like perpendicular to the ref, so only our angle could have seen how the back landed on the side, and should have been a Wazari, but I think they called it Ippon, or they didn't call a score. I don't remember what it was. Yeah.
And there was another funny point where I sort of chopped you because the ref like gave like 3 Wazaris. I'm just like, I slapped you like, hit the damn thing. Sorry, Ippon. I'm in there putting my arm up and stuff like this, and the looks at me and he goes like, oh, Wazari was at Ippon. Yeah, like damn straight it was Wazari was at Ippon.
But these are good opportunities for people to practice reffing. So honestly, I think personally, I would like the refs that've been showing up. I appreciate that they show up, but I'd like them to stop reffing just to give other people a chance to learn how to ref. Because this is where you want to practice reffing, right? Not at a tournament where I waited 8 hours to compete for you to practice your reffing and make the wrong call. You know, so
not at Golden State Open, not at California State Games, not at Winter Nationals. This is where you should be practicing this small. Yeah,
so I'd wish more clubs would host like in-house. It doesn't even have to be big and elaborate like we're kind of doing. You can do like in-house tournaments, which a lot of dojos do. But even then, a lot of times they let the senseis themselves ref.
I've noticed, they'll let the senseis ref. Or to me, it's like they just let a lot of stuff slide because like, oh, it's an in-house tournament. Oh, who cares? It's like that's how you develop bad habits, and that's how people get Hansakamake, disqualifies, Shidos and stuff at real tournaments. Because be like, I get to use our practice all the time.
I might suggest it to Philippe next time. Is like, hey, if it continues getting smaller, then maybe these refs will stop showing up, and maybe we should just like tell our students to start learning how to ref so they understand the rules. And again, I think understanding the rules are really important, right? I was gonna ref, but then I ended up helping out with the scoreboard and also making sure I was trying to troubleshoot the stream at the same time. Because everything on our end looked fine, so I thought it was an internet problem, but it wasn't until I saw the recording was choppy at the end when I got home that I'm like, okay, it wasn't an internet. It was definitely the computer could not handle the encoding. So, so next time I feel pretty confident in Patrick running the scoreboard without my help, and also him teaching other people how to do it. A lot of the people that said they wanted to learn how to run the scoreboard didn't show up. Yeah,
I'll be slapping him next time. That 3 Wazaris already.
Well, you slapped me even though it wasn't me running the scoreboard. He was running for most of it.
So that's pretty interesting experience we did. So that's why we haven't put it up. We did have it up, but just looked horrible. I know we had some people asking about like why it's not on the YouTube channel, why it's off our Twitch now. It's like that. I'm sorry. It was too bad to put up. So that's why that happened. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's move on to some other interesting news. So as we talked about the last episode, Anthony bought an NFT from the IJF, which came with some perks. Came out these little perks and stuff that turned out to be mandatory if you wanted to watch the World Championships. another thing that came out with it that I wasn't really sure exactly what it was. Anthony sent this to me, is that so the IJF, to promote judo, created a server for their own little world on Minecraft. Okay.
I think it's to promote it to kids. So their target audience is definitely kids.
That's the thing. That's the thing. That's the thing that's I want to talk about later and stuff. But that's okay. Just to say, most people that hear about Minecraft think like little kids. I know dudes in their 20s, 30s. I know.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I think
Minecraft.
From what I understand, Minecraft is already considered like old people game like old people, as in like 18, 19, 20-year-olds. All the little kids are playing Roblox now, is what I heard. So
yeah, well, the thing is, like, Minecraft was big like 5 years ago, was super big. Now it's like 5 years later, and like, oh, let's get into Minecraft now. Yeah, why don't we create a MySpace page also while we're at it? Okay, all right. So they created this specific server for you to go on, and it's called Mysteries of the Kodokan. They first opened it back during the Olympic Games last year, and they did it again for the World Championships. I'm not even sure if it's still up anymore.
It should be still up.
Okay, well, Anthony came across, because was it a built-in site when you bought the NFT? Was it like a free thing?
No, it's its own thing. They posted on the Kodokan's Facebook page, or IJF's Facebook page, and that's where I came across it. And I'm like, oh, there's a Minecraft server for judo, and it's basically a replica of the Kodokan building, the Kodokan Judo Institute in Japan. Mm-hmm. And then around it is like a jungle with like dragons and stuff like that. So,
not American, not Western style dragons, like Asian style dragons.
Yeah.
So it was pretty interesting when I looked at it. I asked Anthony if he was going to play it. He's like, no, I'm going to waste my time on this.
No, that's not what I said. I was actually going to do it, but
were you? Okay.
I have not played Minecraft. So I played Minecraft when Minecraft was free, and it was like this guy, the guy who created Minecraft. It was this small little Java project. I was in college at the time, and I looked at his code to learn more about making games in Java. But obviously back then, it was literally just a building game where it was like Legos. There was no zombies. It was a sandbox. There's like the features were very, very sparse.
There were those now it's evolved things that attacked you.
Yeah. Now it's like its own thing. And I'm just like, people are like, oh, you can get a horse and all that stuff. I'm like, what? You can get a horse? Like, so they added a lot of stuff into the game, and I realized it's not free anymore and I have to buy it. So I was about to buy it. Then I realized you need a Microsoft account to play the game. And long story short, I don't want to create a Microsoft account. Mm-hmm. So, for those who don't know, I do play games, but I refuse to play any games that make you download like Steam or.
I would say he's super anti-Steam. If anyone's out there, he's super anti-Steam.
Yeah, so I don't use Steam. I don't want to make a Microsoft account. So I was just like, all right, never mind. And I ended up just watching the YouTube trailer for the Minecraft server, and it looks pretty cool. So in the trailer, they show that it opens up with a little blocky Jigoro Kano right there, talking about how he created judo and stuff. Mm-hmm. And the whole thing is that it's supposed to introduce you to the eight judo values, the IJF 8 judo values and stuff. There's mazes. NFT being one of them.
Yeah, NFT being one of them. I think it's a ninth. That's the ninth value that they're going to do. So
it's like the eight. It's like the 8 Hapono Kozushi, but then there's like the hidden directions, like the NFT being one of the directions.
So you play the game and stuff, and each level you beat, you get a belt, I believe. And in the end, you're supposed to get this special. You're supposed to get a special skin for your guy, which I think is going to be a judo gi or something. Which was funny to me because I was talking to a friend of mine that does play Minecraft about it, and he said, "Getting a judo gi is not that hard. I did a judo gi. He just made a gi. It could be karate gi, a judo gi, could be taekwondo, hapkido. I don't know, but he made a gi for himself." And he said it wasn't that hard. So I don't know if maybe the skin that you get, maybe it says like IG up on the back, or has an IJF patch, or it's this Creston thing or something. But so if you don't know what the 8 values of judo are, so this it's always funny. So the first one is so you're gonna do these tests that are gonna supposed to work with the values or align with the values. So you have courage, respect, modesty, friendship, honor, honesty, which I always think is funny. Honor and honesty. It's like they're so similar.
I don't think they're the same. They're very different. Yeah.
And then self-confidence and courtesy.
Usually, honesty is described as truth in other and other philosophical martial art stuff is truth. Yeah.
Truth, justice, the American way. So there's 8 stages I have to do with all those things. And I was watching it, and I guess the courage one when I was watching was going through a maze. Was supposed to be the courage one, and I thought it's kind of easy. And then I saw the person cheat. They just like skipped the thing. I was like, oh, this is BS. This is such BS. They used some cheat code or whatever it was. So that was interesting, but it was funny that they're supposed to teach the history of, give you a little bit of history of judo, where it comes from, how Kano invented it, the fundamentals of judo. But you don't do any judo. I think you grab another block and throw it or something. Which
is funny because I remember we were watching one of our teenager students play Roblox. Mm-hmm. And he was like, yeah, I can judo throw this guy in the game.
Really? Okay. Yeah. See, why isn't IJF doing that then if you actually throw somebody in there?
I don't think they know what Roblox is. So
yeah, they're not hip and trendy enough. So if you're interested in checking it out, if you have a young child or something, or if someone is interested in judo, young person, if you're an older person, check it out. Let us know how you like it. I told my friend to check it out. He never got back to me, so I don't know if he did or not. Mm-hmm. But the stuff that they're giving you is like, you have to go to a special server, which is okay. You do these little games, you get little belts. I assume you're getting the belts or something. You get the special skin, which I assume will be a judo gi that is not going to be that special because you can make a judo gi in a game anyways. So, but it will be cool to look around this little world of how the Kodokan's made, going through all the levels and getting a little history lesson on there. Do you have anything else to add about the IJF Minecraft?
No, I haven't. I would have more to add if I actually played it, but I don't. Maybe one day I'll no, I probably won't. Maybe I'll borrow someone's account. Maybe I'll borrow someone's account, but then I'm like, yeah, no, probably won't. I don't care enough about this. It's maybe one of you guys who are listeners have a Minecraft account. Maybe you guys can try it and let us know how it is.
Let you guys know how it is and stuff. But that's again if it's still open, because they did do this during the Olympics. They shut it down, and then for the World Championships they opened it back up. All right. Other kind of interesting judo news. So remember how last episode I was talking about, well, maybe after the tournament's done, the World Championships is done, they'll upload it onto YouTube. Mm-hmm. No, they didn't. They didn't do it. They didn't do it at all.
I think you can watch the replay. That's a good question. I think you can watch the replay on the live.ijf.org, but I think it has no commentary. And also, again, I don't know, because my account now has the NFT thing tied to it, the subscription. Yeah. I don't know if maybe you should try it because since you don't have it. I don't know if you can watch the replays or not. I can watch the replays. I don't know if you can, if you don't have the subscription.
Well, my thing is like, they're making the easiest way people can watch it for free, no problem. Most people can do YouTube easily. This past week, they just had the Abu Dhabi Grand Slam, was it?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
They had the Abu Dhabi Grand Slam. And that as well was not on the YouTube channel as well. So you had to go to the IJF website to watch that. I didn't watch it personally because I was just doing other stuff.
I was busy too. Later. Yeah.
But it's getting a little hard to watch judo unless you go on the IJF website.
I did see Daria Belodit get thrown by the Chinese girl with a beautiful Uchimata.
Mm-hmm. With the Canadian dude, Reyes. Yep. Reyes to gold. Mm-hmm. So that's good for him. Proud of him. But it's kind of weird anyways. Like I didn't expect them to have, even though I know the schedule, it's pretty quick for them to have the World Championship. And then like a week later, they're already
the Grand Slam is probably for people that, well, there are people that compete in both, but it's probably for people who didn't make it to the World Championships that wanted to still compete for points. So I understand why it's like that. So
to me, it's like, give them some rest. Give them a month, 3 weeks, not 2 weeks. You know, it's just like one tournament, then another tournament, but that happens sometimes.
Yeah.
All right. So some good news that's going to happen. This chair keeps on moving on. So
is that what that sound was?
Yeah, the chair that I'm using right now. So there's some good news right now. So here at Hollywood Judo, we're changing our schedules and we're changing up our classes. And what we're doing is that we're going to add a beginners kids class and an intermediate kids class. And we're going to add, besides having the beginners adult class, we're going to have an intermediate adult class with the advanced class. We're adding a few things. And with that, I want to congratulate Anthony and now getting his own class. He'll still be my assistant, though. He'll still be my assistant in the intermediate adults class, but he's going to have his own youth class and his own beginners adult class. So, Anthony, are you excited about that? How do you feel about it?
I have mixed feelings. I don't really mind. I just want to help the dojo out, and I want to have more people training judo. And I think adding more classes like this is good because we did have some students that felt there was a disconnect between the beginners class and the advanced class because they were kind of intimidated by what they were seeing in advanced class, right? Mm-hmm. So I think the intermediate class is kind of going to be a good middle ground for them to ramp up and get used to the intensity of the advanced class, because some people come in and they're ready to, like, what's the word I'm looking of? They come in and they're ready to get thrown. Let's just say that. Yeah.
Go and get at it.
But some people are still really intimidated, not sure if they want to do randori. And I think the intermediate class would give them more of that opportunity. Also, one of our other instructors for the beginners class, he's understandably getting bored of teaching the same few throws over and over again. So the intermediate class would really allow him freedom to teach the stuff that he knows, because he has a really unique style of judo. I think it's very strong ground game based, which is rare even by American standards, I think, because usually when you say like an American judoka has a strong ground game, it's very BJJ or wrestling focused. Mm-hmm. But I think Eric has a really unique, actually judo based ground game that a lot of people seem to enjoy, because they don't see a lot of judo clubs go in depth in Newaza. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and also I admittedly am not a big competitor and I'm not amazing at certain things, but I think I'm really good at basics. So I'm excited to try out all these different modern methods I have in my mind that I've read from books, and also I've seen like places like Judo Canada and them do that I want to try out in the class. So I mainly want to do more adults to train judo, which is what I think will grow the sport. I don't think, against what most people think, I don't think the kids are our future. Because most of them quit anyway. Unless you're telling me you can give them scholarships. You can just give them scholarships or put the judo in schools or something like that, then I don't think kids are really our future. Most of the kids in our kids class don't want to be there anyway. Their parents just force them to come, right? There's that few, like 3 or 4 kids that you can tell they really, really like judo. And that's basically how most dojos are anyways. The kids are there because they're forced to go there. And there will be some dojos that are, it's just an exception, I believe, but there will be dojos where the kids enjoy going to the class, but they're not really teaching judo at some of them. They're just play judo, I guess, you know.
That's when I do substitute judo. Yeah. That's what I do.
So play judo.
That's what I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Once they get to that age where you're like, okay, we're done playing now. Now we're actually going to train, like, and teach and do hard stuff. Then I also think that's when you also start losing a lot of the kids, which is something I totally appreciate. People who do enjoy teaching kids, because you're not getting much in return, like even more so than adults, right? Because adults, they're there willingly, and as soon as they realize they don't want to do something, they'll quit, and you kind of just stop wasting each other's times in a sense, right? But for kids, it's like they don't want to be there, and you still got to teach them. And you got to figure out a way to still teach them when they don't want to be there and they don't want to learn. So that's something that's really difficult. And I was supposedly going to start focusing on the beginners class for adults, but because of our scheduling conflict and also our lack of qualified instructors that are available, I think we ended up having to have me take over the beginners kids class, because that was the only way it would have worked out schedule wise. So I couldn't get away from teaching kids, but I think it was good because our kids class has grown exponentially. We started like 3 years right before the pandemic. We had like what? No, okay, not right before the pandemic, but like when we started our kids program, we had like 5 kids, and now we have like over 35 kids.
I remember. This is about how old dog I am. I remember we had 2 kids in our kids class. Yes. All right, I remember we just had 2. So I remember that being like the build from just the building from just the 2 kids that are just 2 sensei's kids that are just like, I'm here because my dad wants me to learn judo and stuff, you know. To being now we have like over 30 kids, and that's why we have to split the kids class into 2.
We have to, and we're already starting to do that. Is that we're splitting the mat space in half, and we're having the younger kids, white belts, go in one side, and then the older kids and bigger kids on the other side, which is just kind of a band-aid solution I kind of think of, because the small kids are fine. They can deal with that small side of the mat, but the big kids, they need more space, which is very, I guess I'll get to it in a bit, but we had to decide between splitting the class based off of age and size or based off of experience, like skill, basically, like whether they want to be there or not, basically. So we decided ultimately the intermediate class will be basically yellow belts, and then for kids, and then the beginner kids class are basically going to be kids, like very young children that can't focus, and white belts. So I think that's a good middle ground for now. And then if we need to adjust, we can adjust. And that's the great thing about this, is we're not an actual public school where, like, if you want to change anything, you got to go through this whole bureaucracy, right? I can just talk to Eric and be like, hey, Eric, I think this is better. And we can just change it right away. They're going to do more rendering with the kids, which is good. The way we run our kids class in our dojo is very unconventional compared to most other judo programs with kids in it. It is because we have the luxury of having our own space, so we have our own space and we can run classes basically whenever we want, versus other clubs. They're usually in a shared space or a community center, and they have set times that they're able to run programs. So very commonly you'll see how in other kids program, they'll have teenagers and even some adult beginner, like brown belt or green belt adults, help out with the kids. And we don't have that at our club. One, because there's many people don't want to show up extra than volunteer for that, even especially teenagers. Teenagers are like, I'm going to go back and play Minecraft, so.
yeah, they're playing Minecraft. They're not playing anything else.
Yeah, or hang out and stuff. So so it's mostly just me and Eric, and recently we added we asked some brown belts and green belts to help out, assistant instructors. So that's a very unconventional way of doing things, because I think it has good sides and downsides. The good sides is you're basically vetting everyone that is teaching, that they're not psycho, for one. And then, like, all our instructors, for example, are background checked, right? I don't think you're going to background check a teenager that you ask to help out at the class, right? Yeah. So other clubs probably don't run background checks on their instructors or assistant instructors, except for maybe the head instructor. And then you know for a fact that the ones teaching it they know what they're doing. You have better quality control, I think. But I think the downside is there's less people available for help. And the other downside is you don't connect with the kids as much. Like when I go train in other clubs and I look at the kids class, the teenagers get along with the younger kids really well. There's someone they can look up to and copy and talk and relate with. And we don't have that in our class, basically. So that's one of the downsides, but overall, I think it's really safe, and that's something we can address in the future. Our kids program is still really new, relatively, so we have a lot of time to iron out these kinks and stuff. And hopefully with the intermediate class now, we can basically help the kids that do want to compete and do want to take judo more seriously. We can help them prosper more, other than waiting till they're big enough to send them to the adults class, which is what some of the kids that we ended up doing is like, okay, you're big enough, you seem to have drive, now go to the adults class. And we don't care how old you are. So
go to the advanced class.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's the thing with other dojos where we keep getting this rebuilding period. That's the only way I can think of talking about is that we rebuilt. We had when we very first started, we had a kids class. Like I said, it was very small. And we got it for like maybe 5-10 kids, and then something happened, and like a bunch of kids dropped out. So we tried to rebuild again, and we had that really good core group of kids. And then the pandemic happened. They all dropped out. Some of them came back. Most of them didn't. Some continued training during the pandemic as well. Then we came back. All those kids are teenagers now. So those guys went to our beginners class and advanced class, where our kids class again now is like, it starts from scratch. Other dojos, you have that just a straight line of them being kids to teenagers to going to advanced. It's a straight line, so they more know each other.
Yep.
With us, I think that pandemic really messed us up because our teens now probably would have known these kids more. They would have trained with them probably or something.
Yeah.
So it's just for us, it's like she's keeping us rebuilding, and we're doing really well right now. So I'm very happy with this that we're doing this because I understand when you guys are having like 35 kids in one class, like they all show up at the same time. You're screwed. That is just so many kids for 2 adults, and I know you're not as mean as I am and stuff. Like I'm more strict with the kids, and you don't. And your thing is that you don't. It's not my job to keep telling them act right. Where me, as soon as I start acting right, I'm just like,
if
I don't throw them across the room or nothing. I mean, like I sit them aside. I have them do push-ups, sit-ups, wall sits and stuff. I made a kid cry one day, and I was like, "Do you want to be in the class or not now?"
I'm not going to lie. Like I take my training, it's the way I teach kids. I take that from books I've read about training dogs, like how I train my dog. And no, it's because they're all behavioral sciences, right? So it doesn't just apply to dogs; it applies to kids and even adults too. They call it brainwashing in a sense, but you're
reinforcement.
But positive
click.
The thing is, positive reinforcement takes time and patience. And again, I'm not against negative reinforcement. This is a debate I have over training my dog all the time because a lot of people, as soon as they hear I use negative reinforcement on my dog, they're like, "Oh my God, that's like so terrible. It should only be positive reinforcement." It's like, no, like the problem is most people use negative reinforcements wrong. It's another tool you have, but it's not one that you can abuse all the time. It's the one that most people tend to grab all the time and they use it because it's right there and it's easy to use. What's a good analogy? It'll be like grabbing a screwdriver and then trying to use a screwdriver for everything, like even hammering, right? Because everyone has a screwdriver, but you might not have a hammer or whatever analogy you want to think of. But negative reinforcement is you got to be really careful of when and how you use it, because it can backfire basically. And especially children, it can really mentally damage them in a way. So like negative reinforcements, just make sure you got to do it at the right time. Like one example I use for my dog is the only time I've used, for example, if my dog does something I don't like, I'll be like, no. And then that tone that you use, that itself is already a negative reinforcement, right? He knows, oh no, he doesn't like that, right? So that is negative reinforcement. Negative reinforcement doesn't always have to mean capital punishment.
I ain't beating kids here, okay? Don't be putting out there Juan beats kids in class or something.
It doesn't always have to be corporal punishment, but corporal punishment should not be used. Like anything negative could be like I said, the tone of your voice or disapproval or making them sit in the corner of the mat or say like, oh, we don't get to play games now at the end of the class. That's all negative reinforcement. People always think negative reinforcement means hitting your dog, kicking them, yelling at them, screaming. It's not that. So same thing with kids. I physically cannot scream at kids. Like this is as loud as my speaking voice goes. And the volume goes up, but my tone doesn't really change. So kids naturally, actually, a kid was crying the other day in class because this tone kind of scared him. But then he realized afterwards, oh no, that's just how he talks. So, but I don't ever scream at the kids. I just like make them do push-ups or say we're not playing games now, or if they're really bad, or say okay, just get off the mat, you're done. You're not allowed to join them because of the safety, right? Mm-hmm. So there's that. But positive reinforcement is a really good way of teaching kids. It's just, again, what I said was you need to have time and patience. And sometimes I don't have that. Like if there's 30 people in the class and Eric calls out sick and I'm the only one, I can't positive reinforce like kids individually, right? And the younger the kids are, the more help you need. So based off my personal experience, I think like 8 to like 12-year-olds, you only really need like one instructor for every like 4 to 6 pairs of kids. So that's like 12 kids, 14 kids. But for younger kids, you need really like one instructor for every 2 pair of kids. So for every 4 kids, you need one instructor. So we're definitely short in that. So we just have to be creative in how we handle the kids. And number one is to keep them focused, but also to keep them safe. That's the main focus of having individual instruction, is so you can keep an eye of everyone to make sure they're safe. And then that's when you start adding the techniques and stuff, and you just got to get them moving. You can't really nitpick on the stuff that like, hey, you got to bend your knees more, all that. Like, that's a luxury we can't afford right now. As long as we're getting them moving, exercising, developing hand-eye coordination, not being fat, which is, we got a lot of fat kids, making them healthy and active. That's a win in my book. And by splitting this class, like the beginner kids class and the intermediate class, like I said, I don't particularly enjoy teaching kids, but for me, that's helping out Eric, able to help the kids, the older kids, develop further. And maybe in 5-6 years, they're going to be a good training partner for me, or they're going to bring in their parents or whatever. So it's all about mutual benefit in the end. And I don't hate teaching kids. Like, people might think, oh, he hates teaching kids. No, I don't hate it. If I hate it, I wouldn't have offered to do it, but it's not my first choice.
So that's what the kids that we're doing. We're at the intermediate kids class. We're having the beginners kids class. So what we're doing also with the adults now is, like we were talking about before, how there is that big jump sometimes from a beginner's class to our advanced class. Our advanced class is pretty advanced because we have a lot of black belts in our class. We don't have a whole lot of brown belts. We have a decent number of brown belts, but we have a lot of black belts. We have a lot of good black belts. So I can understand you're just got your orange belt, you're graduating into advanced class, and you see someone tossing people with huge uchimatas, yoko tomonagas, tayatoshis and stuff. And you're just like, what's going on here? And the worst thing is when you get told to do something that you've never been taught before, because it's not in your
syllabus.
You know?
Yeah,
it's on your syllabus. Like, oh, I don't know how to do okurajima and stuff like that. And it's like, oh, you don't? Oh, well, watch everyone else do it, and then we'll do it. So one really good example I would say is, like, our beginners program basically covers let's just say up to orange belt and maybe some green belt techniques like sumigaishi for a green belt. But afterwards, they're basically kicked off to the advanced class, right? And then when people are ready for their green belt, like Milan recently, it's kind of like, okay, you're ready for your green belt test. And he's just like cramming all the stuff in. It was never there's no formal lessons on how to do ashiguruma, how to do this. It's just kind of like, Sensei Juan, I needed to get ready for my green test. Can you teach me ashiguruma? And can you teach me sumigaishi? It's like, there's no formal lessons for it. So the intermediate class would provide this avenue of, I guess, the traditional way of teaching judo, which is this instructor decides a technique of the night kind of thing. But this allows you to go into details for each throw. And then the advanced class, that's where you still get to they can still go there and try things out, right? Which is open mat. I like to call it reverse classroom, open mat format, whatever Philippe wants to call it. But that allows the freedom of focusing on techniques that they're good at, and also do a lot of randori, ask questions. Doesn't have to be whatever the instructor's teaching that day. So I think the intermediate class is just a plus. It's not like a replacement of anything, or like there's no trade-off other than taking up more of our time. But well, I can see some of the people's frustration where it's like, I don't feel like I'm good enough to be in advanced class all the time. I feel like I get beat up there. I feel like I'm falling behind there. But I don't like going to the beginner's class though, because I feel like I know everything there already. It's the same, the same 6 throws, same 8 throws and stuff all the time. The same 5 pins and a few arm bars. The same stuff over and over again. I feel I know that, so there's just going to be a good medium now. One thing I'm happy about though is that we're going to get some of these people that are having this intermediate class. I think it's going to be really good when we get these people that come from other dojos or they haven't done judo in a long time. Like, well, I'm already a green belt, or I'm already a this belt and stuff. I want to start doing judo, or I want to learn judo. And they try. We talked about this before. They always try to get into the advanced class. And then they'll get to it and we'll be like, you want to know what? Sometimes most of the time we're pretty strong. We're like, no. But sometimes we're like, you want to screw it, fine it. Come to the advanced class. And then they get beat up. And then it's like, oh, Hollywood judo beats up on new people, or beats up on.
Well, most of them can't even last through the warm up, even though I don't think a warm up is that hard. So
I almost killed a guy last week on warm up. I didn't think it was that hard, but so I think it's intermediate class would be good for these people that are like, oh, well, I was a green belt here. Well, great. You can go to our green belt class. You can go to our intermediate class then. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm a blue belt. Oh, that's fine. Intermediate class for you too. Come.
Yeah, because sometimes the advanced class would be too much for them, especially if they haven't done judo in like 20 years, which has happened, right? And then we put them in the beginners class, and then they throw the crap out of new white belts, and we're like, you can't do that to someone who just learned judo for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So the intermediate class, at least you can trust them to people to take the falls and all that kind of stuff. And I also think in the intermediate class, you guys are going to start doing more randori, right? And having like some green and orange belts and brown belts doing randori with the white belts and yellow belts is a good thing. Like that keeps them like, it keeps it safe. When we all know in most martial arts, white belts against white belts usually is a disaster waiting to happen. So
yeah. So that's like my hope is to help out with these new beginners that come from not new beginners, but people that are like medium, intermediate stuff like that. Citrus color, higher citrus, darker citrus colors. I'm gonna have to come up with new things from because I always call them all citrus colors. Now I go to like the darker citrus colors, not the light ones, the darker ones. Nobody dealing with me now. And so what's your plan doing with the adults now? So we talked about the kids and your plan with the kids. So what's your plan with the adult beginners?
So I think we did an episode on beginner teaching. We actually did 2 episodes about beginner classes. One was in the very beginning when we started the beginners class right after the pandemic. And the other one was about ways to teach beginners.
But to me, this is now, you and me have always worked together. Okay. You and Eric always worked together. Now this is just you by yourself. You're the head guy now. You're the head kahuna, the big man in charge. No? Yeah.
So I want to combine, because there's a lot of stuff I want to do, but at the same time, I feel like if I taught those people that way, the beginners that way, then they would go to other clubs or go travel to Japan or something like I like to do. I think that's one of the best parts about judo is traveling and training, which is great. But if I taught using all these modern methods I'm thinking of, they're not going to be able to survive going to other places. Like one would be conditioning, right? The conditioning would not be up to par. They would be like, what? We got to do this. What's some judo drills I can think, like back roll handstands or something like that, or roll into splits or cartwheels or stuff. If I don't keep someone,
you're just naming all the stuff I like to do. You're naming my warm up.
That's what most dojos do, right? That's what I'm just saying. If you don't, I want to abandon those drills, like a lot of those. Not a lot of those. I named them as an example, but I'll call out the one where you stick out your hand and grab like this.
Okay, right? I know you hate that one. Yeah,
I hate that one, right? But
if you're not putting anything into that drill, the thing is that with that drill, if you're not putting anything into that drill, you're not getting anything from that drill. So if you're just a lazy person that's open up, close, like, this is nothing like so stupid.
So I feel like if I don't go over it and explain like, okay, this is why they do it. I don't like doing it, but this is why they do it. And this is how you do it properly. Then when they go to other dojos, obviously you can copy and do it, but there's some more advanced stuff. What's an advanced stuff? Side shrimps. That's another good example. Side shrimps, right? Shrimp, side shrimp, forward shrimps. If we don't do those and then you go to another dojo and they tell you to do it, you're not going to be able to do it. Right. So I think it's still important for me to keep a lot of that old school traditional stuff that I think is, I don't want to say a waste of time, but like there's better ways of doing it. Like if you go to our warm-ups podcast episode, you'll get more elaborate explanation, but I think we still should keep it. I would just spend less time on it. So maybe I'll do side shrimps once a month or twice a month or something instead of doing it every single class in the beginning of class. Or maybe handstand push-ups, I'll do more of that or something. I don't know, not handstand push-ups, but handstand to forward roll. We'll do more of that because it's, I think you get a lot of return on your time investment when you do stuff like that. So I'll just basically modify the warm-up structure a little bit. And also I'm going to put a lot more focus on falling. Just because I'm totally not happy with the level of falling people are taking. And there are a few people that took it more seriously that's been practicing on the side and see huge improvements in both their, not just their falling, but their judo in general, because they're not afraid of falling and getting countered anymore. Right. So then their judo like is better in that sense. And I think it's my weakness in that sense is how to express this importance and make people understand it. Like I'll explain to them, but they'll be like, oh, okay, I'll just take your word for it. But understanding it is different world, right?
Yeah.
So, because a lot of times I would tell someone something and then they wouldn't understand it. They'll say that they'll get it, but then like 5 years later down the road, they'll be like, "Oh, Anthony, you remember this thing you told me like 3-4 years ago? Like, I finally understand it.
It finally clicked.
Yeah, it finally clicked. I thought I get it, but now I finally understand it." So I don't know if there's like a better way of expressing these kind of theories and understandings to people, because I personally had that issue with, like, we talked about kata, how we thought we knew kata, but then every single time we go back and, oh, that's why we do this in kata, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what interests me about teaching, like not the act of teaching itself, but because of the helping people understand these concepts is really interesting to me, and finding new ways of doing that. And it's going to be like a little experiment. Like maybe the way I run class in the beginning is not going to work out. So maybe I'll go back to the old methods. Maybe I'll try new things. And I don't know. But one thing I really want to start doing is we talked about the reverse classroom model, like what Philippe does, basically, like guys work on your own technique. I want to do like a more structured kind of thing. But I'm not going to go full in on the reverse classroom model. For those who follow Lachlan Giles, he's like a big BJJ grappler who has his own online course. He does like a hybrid model kind of reverse classroom. That's probably what I would do. Is some of the class I'd show a technique, and then another part of the class I'd be like, go work on your own thing. Like if you're a yellow belt and you need to be working on, and let's say you're unnaturally talented in Osotogari, right? So I'm not going to have you learn Osotogari the whole class. I'm like, okay, today I'm going to teach Osotogari, and you already know everything. So why would I waste time teaching you Osotogari again, right? Mm-hmm. So during that quote unquote open mat format, you would work on your own technique for your own growth, right? And then I'll go around and help. And one thing I do really want to ask, what I really want to do is at the end of class, or maybe in the middle of class, is do kind of like a sharing session, because it's not just kids. Adults a lot of times are afraid to ask questions, or afraid of looking dumb or whatever. And I want people to start saying, like, asking questions like, hey, I have trouble with Tayatoshi. I can't get this part down. So I've been kind of incorporating that into the substitute classes I've been running for you when you're not showing up, is that I'm like, okay, everyone, I want you to have a question. Everyone, each group, each pair, come up with at least one question on what you're working on. So that way, when someone else comes up and saying, I'm trying to do Seoi Nage, but I feel like something just doesn't feel right, then I'll be like, okay, show me what you mean. And then other people might see it and be like, oh, I never thought about that. I'm struggling with that same problem too. So that way everyone's learning based off of asking questions. And I think that's always the best way to learn, is to ask questions. In addition to that is, as a big person, the kind of troubles I would encounter would be different from someone that a small person encounters. So that way of spreading knowledge so that you can help other people in the same way, or for me to grow as an instructor too, it's like, okay, I might not encounter that question, but I know that I might not encounter those issues personally, but I know the answer to it, right? So because I understand the fundamental concepts of certain throws, and I'll be like, well, as a short person, you really need to do this, right? So that's something I want to start incorporating, but I need to be careful, because sometimes it goes off into a discussion, and then we spend a lot of time talking instead of actually training. So that's something that I really need to, I think I'm going to start off by drawing like hard limits, and maybe not start off with everyone asking questions, maybe just 2 questions a class. And maybe we set a time limit, only 15 minutes spent on these kind of question formats. But a lot of people forget that Mondo Q&A sessions was originally part of judo's curriculum that Jigoro Kano did, because kata, randori, and I forgot the rest. I have to look it up. Basically, kata, randori, and then Mondo Q&A section and lectures are all used to be part of judo. Obviously, with how judo's sport, and no one's going to do lectures, right? And lectures, I personally replace the lectures before class. I personally replace the lectures with reading books for myself, right? And then Q&A would be like traveling and asking different instructors, different things, asking Philippe things and stuff. That would be Q&A. But I think the Q&A format is really valuable part of judo instruction that has not survived, sadly, that I think we should kind of bring back. And again, I think you shouldn't like overly focus on it, because then it's always better to just train than to just talk. But for more semi-experienced beginners, I think it'll be good for them to ask questions and think up questions to ask for that very reason.
No, asking questions and stuff is always a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just when you get overboard with it, and I've seen you sometimes get overboard with it. But
yeah,
hey, me even I'm a third dan. Okay, I almost know almost all the throws. I can do almost every throw and stuff. I know how to dissect most throws. But even me sometimes be like, I want a second opinion. Like I'll ask Sensei Philippe or ask another black belt and stuff that has a different take on it, what they think about it and stuff all the time. Like I still ask questions. Don't ever feel you can't ask questions. Be like, oh, I'm a black belt. I can't ask questions anymore. Or, oh, I'm an orange belt. I can't ask a question about a yellow belt throw. I should already know it. Like you always can ask questions. You're going to get a different take on it and something. So it might help you out, or might just, again, it might click something to help you out. You know,
this is,
go ahead.
Yeah. This is something I carried over from my Wing Chun training. Like when I was training Wing Chun, I asked my instructor, like, do you like teaching? He was like, no, I don't like teaching. And I'm like, why do you do it then? And then he said, once I got to a certain level, my instructor told me there's nothing else I can teach you. If you want to get better, you have to go out there and accept your own students. And it's because, like he said, everyone's fighting style, everyone's body build, everyone's injuries are all slightly different. And they'll ask you questions that you'd have to come up with answers for. Obviously not make shit up on the spot, but it kind of forces you to think things in a different angle for solving different problems. And then once in a while, there will be a student who asks you a question that you have no answer for. Yeah. And then you have to go, it's your job as an instructor to go seek out, one, to admit you don't know the answer, right? And then two, to go seek out the answer by asking people more qualified or more experienced than you. Lost you for a second.
Yeah. So I've noticed now that when I get these incoming calls, it cuts out the thing. Okay. This to go to the call. I'm like, God, these spam calls.
Yeah. So that's part of why I want to volunteer teaching too, is because I learned so much from helping you and Eric out. Like when you guys teach things I've never seen before, I learned something, right? And then people ask questions, and then I try to answer if I know the answer to. And then when I don't know the answer, I'm like, oh, that's a good question. Like one very good example is, what's the difference between Hizaguruma and Sasai, right? Not going to get into that. Or what's the difference between Hane and Uchimata? Like, not going to get into that. But those things really caused me to go out there and look for books and ask Japanese senseis and senseis all over, like asking them what their opinion is and coming to the conclusion myself. And so I think that's something that you have to do. You can only really do as a teacher. So.
Well, one thing about and you'll notice this now when you're the head instructor now, that it's one thing when you get taught the move and stuff, you might show it to somebody, but when you keep going over and over and over a move, you're just dissecting it more and more. And you're like, it's actually going to help you a little bit more perfecting the move, because you have to show every little bit. And there's been times where I'll show something, I'll be like, oh shit, I forgot this one little thing right here. And they're like, oh, this one little part will help people out. Okay, wait, stop. Okay, wait, stop. Get back in the middle. All right, I forgot to mention this part right here. Okay, if you turn the wrist just like this now, it will really help you turn the person over. You know.
One other thing I really want to do, and I think it's something that's unique to our dojo, our judo dojo, that we can do, is I want to start helping people in the beginning, have them question what kind of judoka they want to become, what kind of, not even just judoka, like what kind of martial artist they want to become, right? Because you go to your normal club and it's just like, okay, I'm learning judo. I'm just going to do what the instructor tells me. And what the instructor tells you might not, or teaches you might not exactly line up with what you want to become, right? Because someone might teach you stuff that are specifically for winning competitions. Like, for example, if you go to, I'm not going to name what club, but if you go to certain clubs, they might be like, well, you want to always fight near the edge because this way it forces your opponent to like eat a Shido or give you, or open up themselves for an attack, or you want to get this grip and pretend to attack so that you don't get like a penalty, but the opponent gets a penalty for not attacking. There, like some clubs teach us strategies like that to win, right? And that would totally align with your goal of becoming a competitor, right? But if you're like, hey, I just want to learn how to throw people for Ippon, like I don't want to do Wazari or Yuko Judo. I want to throw people hard for Ippon. Then you would probably not do very well or not be very happy learning from that. And I think early on, I do want to question the students, like, hey, what kind of judo do you want to learn? Like, and if your goal is to become like a competitor, like let's say you want to be a national champion, like, because it's not really realistic for an starting adult to be an Olympic champion or even represent a national team. But let's say they say, I want to be national champion, then I'd be like, okay, got putting in account how much time and money are you willing to dedicate to this, and what is your tolerance for injuries? Like, if you're like, oh, I work like I have 5 kids and my wife is sick and she can't work, and I make minimum wage like doing a physical labor job, then I'll be like, okay, you probably should stick to recreational judo, right? So
what are you doing? Dashing people's hopes, Anthony. Oh, you're so mean.
Yeah, but I think people really need to start questioning these themselves, right? Because a lot of times people get hurt and they're like, oh man, I don't think it was worth it. Like, man, maybe I should like chill. And at that point they're hurt already, right? And they're like, I should like, I think from now on I'm going to be more careful. But then I'm like, hey, if you're trying to be competitive, you're trying to beat everyone, you're trying to be the best that you can be, then that's going to be a risk and a trade-off. And I really want to emphasize that in the beginning so people start thinking about it instead of getting hurt and then regretting it, right? I mean, we kind of did that one time when we had a teenager come and he was heading off to college and he said, I want to be a neurosurgeon. And me and Dr. Tony at the time was in the locker room. And we were like, if you want to be a neurosurgeon, you should probably quit judo, was what we told him. And I'm like, you need your fingers. And Tony was like, he could barely even tie his belt. He was like, yeah. So
yeah, take it from me.
So he did. The kid did quit. He listened to our advice and quit. And there were sometimes we're professional musicians where like you probably should not do judo.
I've had a time where one guy was a bassist in a band and he wanted to do judo. He it was weird. He wanted to do judo, but he didn't like falling that much. He was having a really hard time with it. And I was talking with him later, like, so what are you doing? Stuff? Oh, I'm a bassist in a band and stuff. I'm like, oh, you're a bassist in a band. So you use your fingers a lot. Yeah, I really don't think judo's for you then. I've only had that conversation a few times. One was with this bassist guy that was kind of funny. And his other one was this, oh, no. Well, okay, here's a funny story. It wasn't my story. It's actually before I came to Hollywood. So in essence, Gary told me. We had a guy here at the dojo. He was training to become a dentist. And the day before one of his final exams, where he was doing actual surgery on somebody or doing actual thing to somebody, he came to judo, did randori, dislocated his finger. So I don't know, took him to the hospital or something, since Gary told me. But since that day, I guess how long ago that was, they never saw that guy come back.
Yep. So I mean, I wouldn't say you don't train judo, just don't train judo before you have a big test coming up, right? Just like how I don't do randori before I have a big trip coming up, for example, or right before I was getting married, for example, right? So these are things that I'm like, I want to emphasize is like, it's okay to always change your mind. Like you might come in thinking you want to be a national competitor, then you realize how tough it is, or maybe your life situations has changed, circumstances. Then it's always okay to change your goals. And when you change your goals, again, you got to reevaluate. There's trade-offs, because it's like, if you want to be national champion, it might be now or never too, right? So I really want people to start thinking about this, and that bleeds into the way you train judo, because let's be honest, there's a lot of techniques that, like drop seoinage is a good example, right? There's a lot of techniques out there that will get you wins at the expense of your longevity in the sport. Yeah. And how you train those techniques and which techniques you decide to focus on in the beginning is going to be heavily influenced by your goals. So that's why I really want to emphasize, because I'm tired of the whole judo is tough on your body, you're too old to start judo. I'm going to straight up and just say misconceptions, because I think they are misconceptions. if you want to argue with me about it, feel free to post in the comments, or send me a DM on Instagram. But I think there are misconceptions, and I want to help get rid of them. I think it's a problem with the way you're teaching and the way you're setting the expectations in the beginning. Because everyone's in judo right now, everyone's training the same way with the same goal in mind, which is become a high level competitor. Versus when I went to Japan, there's people perfectly happily just doing some uchikomis, a couple of rounds of randori, and calling it a day, right? Yeah. And that's when you also set the expectation. We're going too deep, but that's also when you kind of adjust how hard you go in randori and pick your training partners and stuff is to your goals, right? Does going with this person hurt my goal, or does it help me with my goal? Basically, is how I would see it. And yeah, so that's, I think I'm talking too much about it, but yeah, I think it's really important.
You have some interesting plans. You have some interesting ideas. There are things that now you can try yourself, just you being a head instructor now, and not just talking with me about or talking to Eric about like, hey, I want to try this. Hey, can we do this? This is your thing now. And I'm really interested to see how this turns out for you. Yeah. One with the kids, I've seen you with kids and stuff, but now with the adults, and see how they turn out, see how I'm not be like all mean, like see who stays and who goes, but like see if Anthony can keep a class. But no, I want to see how this turns out for you. Like, this is a big jump for you. Okay?
Yeah, a lot.
You're only a first dan. You know, you're only a first dan. You've only been a first dan for what, maybe a year, if that.
A little over a year, yeah.
A little over a year now. So this is a big jump for you. You know, like, this is a thing that a lot of people wouldn't want to do. Like, how many black belts do you know here at the dojo that talk big? That and I don't get mad if you're on or friends that talk about wanting to help, wanting to teach and stuff, but who actually steps up and does it, you know? So I'm really I'm excited for you. I'm happy for you. And let's see how it goes.
Yep.
And always feel free to ask me questions, Philippe questions, Eric questions about stuff. You know, it's going to be an interesting experience for all of us.
Yeah. I think the beginner class fits me perfectly because I do want more adults doing judo, like I said. Because other sports, like you see old people in a basketball court shooting hoops and stuff. They're still playing basketball, right? You're saying, oh, they're still playing basketball. And the judo equivalent would be like, oh, you're not trying to get in an NBA? Then you're not really a basketball player. Like,
you're not trying to get NBA?
There's this whole stigma. It's like,
what are you doing here?
you're not competing. You're not going to nationals. You're just, you're only doing nagekomis? Like, oh, then you're not really a judoka. It's like, no. As long as you're showing to the dojo, practicing, doing what you're comfortable with, then you're doing judo. You're a judoka. It's just, and also, I guess there's a philosophical martial value side of judo that also would make you a judoka, not just the throws. But I'm not saying that everyone should be able to get a black belt, right? Obviously, if you're not going to do randori, you're most likely not going to get a black belt, right? And if you don't compete, it's not that you won't get a black belt. It'll just take a very long time. So that's another thing I think at the expectations you have to set is because there will be some people come in and think, as long as I throw everyone in this club, then I'll be a black belt within this club, right? There's those type of people. Then there's those people who are like, I can get a black belt by not just doing uchikomis for like 20 years. Right. And then they're still like a brown belt 20 years later. And you're like, okay, what did I do with 20 years of my life? So
you become a good judo player. You're a very solid judo player. All right. You're not competition level. You're very solid.
So I think it's really good to set expectations early on. So again, safety, just to make sure everyone's happy. And also we don't waste each other's time. So, because I mean, if one thing's in common between all of us is that our time is limited. So.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that whole thing about a YMCA basketball player not being a real basketball player because not trying to get NBA. Yeah. Because we just had a gentleman join the dojo this past week and stuff, join the dojo this past week. The gentleman's in his 50s. He's very good and stuff, but he hasn't done judo in I don't know how many years. Mm-hmm. And Winter Nationals is about 4 weeks away. And he hasn't done judo in I don't know how many years, but he heard of us talking about it. And he already told Philippe, like, yeah, I want to go to Winter Nationals. Like, sir, no, sir. You haven't done judo in so many years, even at the age of 50.
Yeah.
I don't know if he can get in shape and form.
Hey, again, just tell him what he's signing up for. And then he's an adult. He has it's like I said, pick your risks, right? You're not, I mean, I think you still have, as an instructor, you still should gauge whether he would kill himself. Like going there. And if you look at him, especially since he just signed back up, right? So I think Philippe's not going to tell him just go in without evaluating his own well-being first. But if he's like might not win, but he'll not get hurt seriously, then I think it's okay for him to go.
All right. And with that, let's end the podcast because now we're just rambling on about our teaching techniques, the different styles, and stuff like that. Anthony has some crazy ideas and things that he wants to do in the beginner's class, the beginner kids class, and the beginner's adults class. I hope it goes well for Anthony. I hope I don't get a call one day of like, Juan, I need you to come here right now and help me out.
Juan, I'm getting bullied by the kids.
I'm getting bullied by the adults. All right. So please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Please follow us on Instagram. Please follow us on I'm going to say Twitter again. Please follow us on Instagram. Please follow us on YouTube at Tatami Talk. You can follow me on Instagram at @the_1. You follow Anthony Throws on Instagram. You can follow the channel itself on those same sites as always. I always say all the time. If you want to give us any messages, send us emails, questions, anything you want to go through, like always, at tatamitalk@gmail.com. Anthony, is there anything else you want to say?
No. Maybe we'll do an updated episode a few months after I start and see how everything's going. Because it'll be, I think, as far as I know, no one in judo I know does this kind of thing. So,
all right, we'll see how it goes. And with that, don't forget to
slap the mat.